Red silk ribbon. Mr. Oot has not been happy these past few days. He has been upset about the chicken coop being broken into and the chickens being stolen. Strangely enough, the coop was located next to his room and his sick brother who was bedridden. And yet the chickens were still missing. They disappeared as quietly as if nothing had happened. Not a sound. Not a cry. Even Lou, who was usually so sensitive, did not bark. The more he thought about it, the more angry he felt. Was it because he had built a house in the Luke Suc Palace that for several years he had not had chicken to eat during the 3 days of Tet? It had been a long time since his parents passed away, leaving behind a half-dead younger brother. He had never known the taste of meat. Sometimes the fox came in and ate all the chickens, leaving only a handful of bloody feathers, scattered around the coop. A few bloody feathers were even dragged by the mischievous fox to the floor of his and his younger brother's bed. Sometimes a thief sneaked into the house when he was in the field and took the chickens. That younger brother was really useless. All day long he just rolled his eyes, grinned with a crooked mouth but refused to speak. And if he could speak, who knows, the foxes might be afraid of human voices and wouldn't dare come near. On top of that, he didn't know how to walk. Maybe if he heard footsteps, his house wouldn't have been robbed. And it was robbed in broad daylight. But let's not blame it. If you blame the green man. Why did he give birth to an imperfect creature? And if you consider it an animal with limbs, it's useless, when it can't use its limbs for eating or personal activities. The doctors who studied in Western schools, the old mandarin's friends, talked about its illness. He said something about brain degeneration or paralysis, that Mr. Oot didn't know. He was born as a tenant farmer. His grandparents and parents were the same. So how could he have the knowledge to understand the complicated matters of his superiors and predecessors? Fraud. Calmly thinking for a moment, Mr. Oot hurriedly went into the house, took a spear, and went to split bamboo. There was a lot of bamboo in the land of the landlord ca, but tenant farmers like him could only ask for the core to use temporarily. People split the bamboo bark to weave bamboo baskets, to make rice containers. Sometimes bamboo was used to weave baskets, winnowing baskets, and to sharpen fishing rods. Rich people with land could freely use bamboo as a multi-purpose product. But, poor people like him could only ask for the core of the bamboo to bring home to split into bamboo baskets and make walls. The walls of his house were all made of bamboo. Where they were sturdy, they would temporarily cover them with one piece. Where they were weak, they would use 2 or 3 pieces to keep out the wind, warm the house, and protect against storms. Mr. Oot's skillful hands gently split a bamboo stalk into pieces. He used a spear to separate the ends of them into small, very thin pieces. Then he bent the bamboo stalk to crush it and began to strip it into many small pieces, weaving them into the unfinished bamboo mat. When he was done, Mr. Oot covered the mat over a bamboo frame that had been prepared a few days before. Using small strips and strings, he began to tie them together. By the time the sun was setting, he had finished a rectangular door, with a vertical jamb about 2 inches longer than the side. Thus he had a door to install in his house, without having to go to the market to buy hinges, which would be a waste of money. The long pillar was inserted into a bamboo segment driven deep into the ground. The upper end was tied with coconut strings, and he had a mill door that could be opened and closed. The other day, because the house had no back door, Lou sneaked in and ate half a kilo of his meat. His fate was so miserable and he had no luck with meat. His brother from the next village knew that his theft had happened, and that he had had a few years of bad luck with raising animals, so he gave him half a kilo of meat. But that damn dog had the audacity to eat half a kilo of his precious meat. But it was strange. Lou had never dared to be so rude. He could hunt rats and catch monitor lizards, but he had never touched the food on the cupboard. I wonder what kind of animal's liver the dog ate to dare to do that. Since B, his younger brother, grew up a little, the lonely house in the deserted alley became even more deserted. The neighborhood children did not like to come to his house to witness a pitiful man with many terrible faults. And they were right to be afraid of B. Because his pale face always had a strange smile. His white eyes opened wide and stared at every child with an inexplicable desire. Those eyes looked at no one, when the whites were too big to contain the tiny pupils that kept running around. His mouth also looked strange, sometimes distorted or drooping with a long, red tongue, every time he opened his mouth to smile at someone. The children in the neighborhood said to each other, "Mr. Oot's younger brother's tongue is so long. It's so long that we don't know if it's really human or not." Of course, these things were whispered to each other secretly by the young and old, for fear that Mr. Oot would hear and be upset. But the more gossipy things are in life, the easier it is to listen to. Mr. Oot accidentally heard it and didn't care. Because he knew people were right to be afraid of Bee, when he loved him so much, and sometimes looking back, he was also terrified. People have their own fate. Mr. Oot often said that when he had to take care of a disabled younger brother, separated from the villagers, he had a miserable fate, and he had to suffer having to carry a drop of blood that he could not bear to throw away. There was no meat to eat. The main food in the house was fish from the fields. This sometimes made Mr. Oot feel more secure. After all, there were countless fish from the fields. Just a few dozen hastily hooked fishing rods would be enough to have something to eat. But Bee at home was very picky. He was born in a tenant farmer's house, but it was like living in a rich family. He ate 3 grains of rice. The simple fish sauce did not satisfy him. One day, he was busy, and after hastily braising a pot of fish, he left after scooping out a few pieces of fish for his younger brother. When he finished his work and returned, he found that the pot of fish was not cooked enough, and the smell was still fishy. But Bee had already finished the bowl of fish and saved some for himself. Looking at his eyes, Mr. Oot was surprised. It seemed that the boy liked to eat fatty dishes. Normally, he braised fish very well, but he could not satisfy his younger brother. He ate very little but still grew fast. The only problem was that he did not want to walk like other people. The older he got, the more he smelled, with the smell of chicken and duck lingering somewhere. But it smells like chicken and duck while the house has no chicken. How long can the duck live with the disaster of foxes and thieves? The neighbors also complain about losing chickens and ducks continuously without understanding the reason. Mr. Oot also saw this. Because before, the neighbors' chickens and ducks also came here, but each year they were absent. After that, they disappeared completely. So is it because the foxes are too rampant or the thieves are becoming more and more cunning and devious? The disaster is a common disaster. But the whispered words that reach the ears become more and more difficult to hear. The elderly and children say that his garden is haunted. This ghost specializes in eating raw meat, so no chickens or ducks can live in that garden. Mr. Oot did not pay attention to the idle words. He went to the fields in the day and did not return until dark. In the morning, he hurriedly cooked rice, then divided it into 2 portions, one to take with him, one for his disabled brother. So he only had relatively leisurely evenings, sometimes with a cup of tea, sometimes with a few small glasses of wine. Then he rolled over and went to sleep, waiting for dawn. The farmer's sleep was so heavy that the rats in the house became restless and rampant. Now, in his half asleep, he could hear them rummaging through pots and pans, which was very annoying. In the morning, the snakehead fish that had just been dried in the sun had disappeared without a trace. What kind of rats were they? They specialized in eating raw fish, but never touched dried fish that had been dried in the sun. It was also painful to lose things for a long time. Many nights, Mr. Oot tried to stay awake to see what the rats looked like. As if they understood his intentions, they became quiet as if they had never been there before. However, when they were too tired, they would make a ruckus in the pots and pans after a short nap. One day, the bright moon shone through the cracks in the bamboo wall at the end of the porch, making the room dimly lit. In his sleep, Mr. Oot seemed to see a red silk strip fluttering in the empty house. That faint silk strip appeared and disappeared when he opened his eyes. Many times like that, but he still thought he was dreaming and saw a chicken as a crow. One day, the family next door had a death anniversary, and Mr. Oot was invited over to eat a bowl of rice on the anniversary day. That day, he drank a little too much and got drunk. As soon as he got home, he fell asleep on the bed. The bed was 1.6 meters wide, always enough room for both of them. In the middle of the night, Mr. Oot suddenly woke up when he felt a tickling sensation on one side of his cheek. Something soft like wet silk kept caressing his face. In his drunken stupor, Mr. Oot thought Lou was acting up and jumping onto the bed to lick his face. But when he opened his eyes and looked closely, he realized that the red silk strip that haunted him every night was dancing and wriggling. The red silk strip as big as 3 fingers was fluttering, as if playing and teasing the drunk's face. Mr. Oot wanted to reach out and grab the silk strip, but his hand couldn't follow his will. A drunk's hand never obeys its master's will, especially when he had just woken up from a nap. The noise made the silk strip suddenly disappear as if someone had pulled it into a dark place, very close. It seemed to be right next to where he was lying. Where the boy was silently looking at him. The boy looked at him as if he didn't understand. That boy, why isn't he sleeping at this hour, just opening his eyes and staring at him like that? And why are his eyes so green? No. Not green. In them is the flickering light of 2 bright red marbles. Looking at it, Mr. Oot suddenly panicked and shouted. "What are you doing, baby?" In the dead of night, his shout must have been very loud. It made the boy jump with the sudden change in his face. His eyes no longer sparkled with the strange light they had before. His lips drooped again as they had always done. But what was strange was that his face looked regretful, as if he had just lost a childhood pleasure. This is not good. There is something different about this little brother. It's as if he came from a dark place that humans cannot know about. Mr. Oot thought so and stayed awake until the rooster crowed in the morning. Today, after pulling up rice seedlings, Mr. Oot went straight to his brother's house in the next village. The 2 brothers were cousins, so they had been close since childhood and did not have to hide anything from each other. "Brother Tam. I'm so worried. The boy at home is changing day by day, I don't know, what else? I don't know if I can handle it in the future," he said sadly to his brother. Old Man Tam looked at his younger brother with sympathy and concern. He had heard more about his nephew than his younger brother, but did not know how to start the conversation smoothly. "I know you suffer because of it. But what can you do? After all, it is your own flesh and blood." Having said this, he hesitated, then fell silent. Mr. Oot told his older brother about the strange things that had happened recently. Mr. Tam sat and listened for a while, then gave his younger brother some advice. "Whatever you want to do, you must know the whole story. I heard many scary things about the boy, but I still doubt him. Sometimes I want to tell him, but I'm afraid he'll be sad. There are only 2 of us, if you're always out in the fields, you won't know about the housework. If you want to know about the boy's activities, you have to sneak around to understand." After saying that, the old man hurried into the house, took out a chicken with its legs tied, and gave it to Mr. Oot. "Your face is so pale. Take this chicken home and cook green bean porridge. I can only help you this much." Mr. Oot had only gone halfway when it started to rain. It was raining heavily. Thunder and lightning were everywhere on the horizon. The road became slippery in the blinding light of the lightning. When he got home, Mr. Oot hurriedly put the chicken in the coop, then ran straight to the field. "If we're not careful, the rice seedlings will be washed away." He thought so and ran faster and faster. About 10 steps away from the field, Mr. Oot suddenly stopped. It wasn't that he was exhausted, it was just that he didn't want to go on when he remembered what his older brother had said. "We have to keep an eye out. See what B does every time I go to the field." The door of the back house dimly appeared in the rain and lightning. Lou did not run out to greet him like usual. I wonder which neighbor's dog it ran after. The door he made to prevent the foxes from reaching the chicken coop was only 10 steps away when Mr. Oot heard the chickens screaming, "It's those damn foxes again." Mr. Oot grabbed a stick, pushed the door open and rushed in. The door with its hinges turned with a creaking sound, and before his eyes appeared the evil silk strip from that night. The only difference was that it was very long and red with blood and the flash of lightning. As soon as he heard the noise, the silk strip flew towards the front house very quickly. In just a flash, it disappeared. Mr. Oot looked into the chicken coop and saw only a bunch of blood-red feathers lying there. Quickly walking to the bed, he saw Bee's face as if he was sleeping, but the strange thing was that there was a little blood on the corner of his mouth. It's not the fox that ate the chicken. The chicken died because of that red silk strip. But what was that silk strip? Why was Bee's mouth stained with blood in his sleep? After that night, Mr. Oot began to notice many strange things happening in the house. It was normal for farmers to get bitten by leeches while pulling rice seedlings or planting rice. Others were bitten by leeches and their faces would dry up after a day, and by the second day they were completely healed. However, the leech wound on Mr. Oot's leg would not heal, it would become muddy with yellow fluid and pus. Sometimes it would last for a week or a month without healing. Finally, he had no choice but to apply medicine. Could it be because of that silk strip? Mr. Oot quickly dismissed the thought in his head because he thought it was strange. But, what could it be? So he hatched a plan to make everything clear. In January, the fields were dry and the grass was burnt. This season, the rice harvest had been completed, so everyone rushed to the fields to hunt mice and catch birds. Mr. Oot caught many birds and brought them home to roast until they were fragrant. But Bee did not eat them. Lately, he had become visibly thinner. Looking at him, he felt sorry for him, because he knew the saying blood flows, the intestines soften. In the afternoon, someone from the next house killed a pig and gave him a pound of meat. He threw the meat onto a basket, too, hanging on the kitchen rack, then hurried off to set up his fishing rod, 3, to catch the fish in time for the evening. After walking 3 or 4 rows of the garden, he suddenly remembered the red silk ribbon and turned back. The door with the mill hinges always creaked, so Mr. Oot put some mud in it. Thanks to this, when he pushed the door open, it didn't make any noise. In the dim light, Mr. Oot saw the silk strip dancing in the kitchen. It looked like something that was happily playing, so it didn't know about the stranger's presence. Cautiously, gently, step by step, Mr. Oot approached the silk strip. The January night sky was filled with bright stars. The converging light of the stars penetrated through the hole-filled roof, shining into the silent kitchen. Mr. Oot's eyes opened wide to look at that strange object. The thing that haunted him in his sleep every night. The cause of the death of the chickens and ducks. Furthermore, he had not tasted meat for 5 years, also because of it. Anger, resentment, rage. All because of that evil silk strip. Suddenly he was stunned. His body was cold as if he had just soaked in water for a long time. The silk strip looked like a tongue, with tiny taste buds protruding from its body. These small strands trembled, wriggled, and scratched at the piece of meat on the kitchen counter. Then it disappeared towards the front of the house, then reappeared immediately after. The movement was repeated with the regular chewing sounds of a child enjoying a meal. Mr. Oot's head was spinning with many thoughts. Human tongue? Impossible. A human tongue cannot be that long? If he only stood in the kitchen to estimate, that thing would be over 3 meters long, not to mention where it originated. But it was clearly a tongue, not a silk strip. That tongue was licking the still red piece of meat lying there. And each time it did so, the piece of meat would shrink before his eyes. Mr. Oot suddenly remembered the rumor and was shocked. His tongue stiffened while the red silk strip was dancing happily in front of the meat. Mr. Oot's trembling hand groped in the dark, searching for something. Anything that came into his hand at that moment would add courage to a man who was being swallowed by fear. The kitchen was empty. There was nothing within reach that he could reach. His trembling hand suddenly touched a warm place. It was the fire that had been used to roast birds in the late afternoon. The warmth of the ashes did not make Mr. Oot less nervous, on the contrary, it increased his despair. There was no way to run away. Because there was still Bee in the house. Then he rushed in and grabbed the hideous silk strip. The devil's tongue had been living off the meat in his house. The devil's tongue struggled fiercely with tremendous strength. Its body was slippery and full of slime, making it even harder to grasp. Mr. Oot was pushed into the fire filled with hot ash. No matter what, he was determined not to let go. A thought suddenly appeared at the critical moment. He quickly grabbed a handful of ash and tightened the silk strip in his frenzy. In the room, there was the sound of BS mumbling, mixed with the terrifying howl of Lou. The dog's howl seemed to be broken, trembling, and scared. Mr. Oot ignored everything. Because now he was holding the tongue with his hands full of ash. But it was very strong. It pushed south, pushed north, then dragged him into the bedroom. B kept on mumbling and coughing, his arms and legs waving haphazardly on the bed. The light of 1,000 stars shone through the rotten mat on the porch, illuminating B's face. Mr. Oot saw it and screamed in horror. Oh my God! He was no longer a little brother. It was a demon with a long, hideous tongue, trying to wrap itself tightly around his brother. The tongue, which had been trying to retract at first, now stretched forward, wrapping around Mr. Oot's neck several times. The tip of the tongue was full of saliva, browned, and groped his face. Terrified by what was happening, Mr. Oot grabbed the machete, at the head of the bed, then swung it up. The sound of wooden fish and gongs resounded loudly in the quiet night. The villagers on the edge of the canal, next to Mr. Oot's house, were shouting and calling for the fire brigade. The fierce fire in the dry season blazed up, illuminating the quiet countryside. When people rushed to the house, Mr. Oot's house had burned down in an instant. The young people used coconut shells to put out the fire to look for the unfortunate person, but found nothing but a scythe and a few pieces of broken earthenware bowls. People were talking excitedly, not knowing if the people in the house had escaped or had been burned to ashes. Long after, no one understood what had happened to the two unfortunate brothers. Among the many suspects, there was only one person who remained silent. That was Old Man Tam from the neighboring village. He remained silent, not because he knew nothing. And one should not blame the taciturnity of an old man who was near death. Because, if one day he did not tell the truth, then, how could this horrifying story have happened? Macdung. 1. A long-handled, pointed knife. 2. A type of round, loosely woven tool used to sift rice. 3. Estimated number of sentences. 4. Grass cutter, long blade, L-shaped handle.